You keep trying to change. You meditate, you affirm, you visualize, you write down the dream life, speak it into the mirror, feel it in your bones. But if you're honest, there's still that quiet, aching question behind it all. Why does it still feel far away? Why does it still feel like you are the one holding the strings, puppeteering the outcome? There's this subtle tension, a grip, a silent pressure, living underneath the rituals. A vibration of not yet, humming beneath every action you take to get there. And that's the thing, that's the interference. Because the self that is trying to change is still aligned with the problem. The self that is doing the work is still carrying the frequency of something missing. And no matter how beautiful the words or powerful the intentions, if the identity behind them is coded in urgency, in lack, in effort, the signal is scrambled. So what if the real shift isn't in trying harder, but in dissolving the part of you who's trying it all? What if real change begins the moment you stop being the one who needs to change? Feel that for a second. Feel the paradox. It's not apathy. It's not giving up. It's the release of the illusion that your becoming is in your control. It's stepping out of the equation where your worth is earned, your future is chased, your freedom is manufactured. The truth is, the more you try to become something you're not, the more you reinforce that you're not already it. You loop in the frequency of distance, of effort, of striving. You subtly affirm that where you are is not enough. And your nervous system? It hears that. It absorbs the tension of that chase. It stays in a state of readiness, of bracing, of scanning for signs. And as long as you're bracing, you're not receiving. As long as you're trying, you're not trusting. Real transformation, the kind that collapses timelines and rearranges your world from the inside out, doesn't come from the will of the mind. It comes from coherence, from safety, from identity. Not more doing, more remembering. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And what you are, beneath the conditioning, beneath the wounds, beneath the self who tries to heal, is already whole, already aligned, already magnetic. But you can't embody that while still playing the role of the fixer, the controller, the one who must figure it out. You must step out of the part, out of the loop, out of the story. You must become the field, the open space where possibility rushes in, not because you summoned it with effort, but because you became still enough, coherent enough, safe enough to match it. That's the invitation, not to change more, but to become less of the one who thinks they need to. There's a moment in every seeker's path where exhaustion sets in, not from physical labor, but from the invisible weight of constantly managing your vibration, monitoring your thoughts, policing your feelings, wondering if you're doing it right, wondering if you're blocking it, wondering if you're enough. It's subtle, it's spiritual burnout disguised as devotion, sacred effort laced with fear. You sit in stillness, but your body is tight. You visualize the future, but your stomach is clenched. You say the affirmations, but there's a tremor of doubt behind your smile. Because underneath it all, there's a frequency of effort, and effort always assumes separation. Effort is beautiful in the human world, but in the quantum field, it's noise, static. It disrupts the resonance between you and the reality that's already encoded in your field. You are not separate from your desire. It's not out there waiting to be summoned. It's already alive inside the version of you who doesn't need it to feel whole. The moment you relax into that truth, not just mentally but cellularly, the field begins to move. Because frequency is not about thoughts, it's about embodiment. And embodiment begins when the nervous system feels safe enough to stop performing, to stop managing, to stop chasing vibrational perfection. Real change happens when the body feels safe to stop trying. Imagine this. A flower doesn't force itself to bloom. It doesn't recite daily intentions to open. It aligns with the season, with the sun, with the unseen intelligence coded into its cells, and it unfolds. Naturally, coherently, timelessly. You are no different. When you stop identifying as the one who must change, you become the one who already has. You collapse the timeline between now and the future self. You stop reaching. You start remembering. That's the mechanism. The quantum mirror doesn't reflect what you're striving for. It reflects what you've already accepted. So when you stop being the one trying to change, you become the field where change is effortless. The grip softens. The breath deepens. The nervous system unwinds. And suddenly the signal clears. This is the coherence that manifests miracles, not with control, but with clarity. Not from tension, from trust. Not from who you're trying to become, but from who you already are underneath the story that says you're not ready yet. I know it can sound impossible, this idea of letting go when everything in your life feels like it needs your intervention. The bills still need to be paid, the message hasn't come, the relationship feels fragile, the dream feels distant, and so the mind jumps in, hungry to help. It says, let me fix it, let me manifest it, let me take control. But here's the paradox. The more you try to force reality into your vision, the more your very effort fractures the frequency that would have aligned you with it. It's not your vision that blocks you, it's your attachment to being the one who gets it there. Control is a disguise for fear, and fear always creates fragmentation in your field. Not because fear is wrong, but because fear signals to the quantum that you don't yet trust yourself to receive, and receiving is the language of the field. See, in the vibrational universe, you don't receive by achieving, you receive by allowing. And you allow not when you abandon your desire, but when you dissolve the identity that feels unworthy of it. There's a difference between a body that holds vision with open hands and a body that grips it like a lifeline. One is magnetic, the other is resistant. Think about the version of you who's already living the outcome you crave. Are they trying, forcing, doubting every step? No, they're being. They're not manifesting, they're embodying. Their signal is stable, clear, unwavering, not because they never feel fear, but because they know who they are beyond it. And here's where it gets deeper. When you stop trying to change yourself, you create space for something much more profound, the death of the false self, the quiet unraveling of the identity that was built on trauma, protection, performance. The version of you who became the fixer, the healer, the doer, all in an attempt to feel safe enough to be loved, seen, chosen. But that identity is a frequency, and you cannot hold the signal of your next level life while still vibrating inside the story that says you must earn it. This is the work, not effort. Unwinding, not becoming more, becoming less. Less of the persona, less of the role, less of the vibration of striving. And in that surrender, a new field opens. Imagine laying in grass on a warm summer day, sun on your face, and for a moment, no thoughts, no plans, no pressure, just breath, just being. That stillness, that's the frequency. That's where coherence lives, and that's where your new timeline waits. Because coherence isn't about perfection, it's about internal agreement. When your body, heart, and mind are no longer at war with each other, when your system feels safe enough to relax, to trust, to stop managing the how, the signal clears. The field responds. Not because you earned it, but because you aligned with it. So ask yourself gently, what would shift in your life if you stopped being the one trying to change? If you let go of the story that said healing only happens through effort? If you stopped proving your worth by how hard you try? What if you became the one who remembers, the one who surrenders the mask, softens the grip, and allows the future to arrive not through force, but through frequency? Because the truth is, you are not the creator trying to fix your reality. You are the reality trying to remember your true self. There's a reason surrender feels terrifying, because to the conditioned self, the one who's built a lifetime on strategy, survival, self-control, surrender feels like death, and in a way it is. Not a death of your essence, but of the identity that was never truly you. The one who calculated, convinced, contorted just to feel safe in a world that praised effort and punished stillness. But this version of you, the grasper, the fixer, the one tirelessly seeking transformation, is not the version that brings your quantum desires to life, because quantum manifestation doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to presence. It's not about directing energy from your mind. It's about broadcasting a signal from your being. And here's the quiet truth we often miss. The frequency of trying to change is rooted in the assumption that who you are now is not enough. So even the purest intentions get entangled in resistance. The act of trying becomes the frequency of lack. The pursuit becomes the postponement. Like trying to calm turbulent water by stirring it. The more you do, the more you disrupt the clarity. But there's another way. Not effort. Equanimity. Not tension. Trust. This shift happens in the body before it happens in the world. It begins in the breath. The deep, open, surrendered breath that tells the nervous system, we are safe now. It begins in the heart. The softening, the widening, the willingness to feel instead of fix. It begins in the moment you say, I no longer need to become. I choose to remember. Remember what? That you were never broken. That you were never behind. That you were never disconnected from your desires, only from the version of you who already holds them. And when you remember, when you stop trying to manipulate your way into the future, you begin to embody the frequency that makes it inevitable, because embodiment is the bridge, not words, not effort, state. When your inner world reflects the safety, peace, and power of the life you desire, that life begins to reflect you, not as a reward, as a resonance. This is why people who stop obsessing suddenly get what they were begging for. The moment you no longer need it to feel complete, you become a match to it. Not by strategy, by signal. This is how timelines collapse. Not through more vision boards or affirmations or tightly wound morning routines, but through identity shift. When you stop living as the one who is seeking change and begin to live as the one who already knows, everything reconfigures. You begin to notice the synchronicities. The doors open without you pushing. The people, the calls, the opportunities, they land with softness instead of struggle. Because life is not responding to your effort, it's responding to your essence. And your essence is clearest when you stop trying to be anything other than who you already are beneath the conditioning. That's where the real change begins. Not with another goal, but with the sacred undoing of the self who thinks she needs one. Not from adding more, from allowing more. And you can only allow when you stop being the one trying to change. So what does it feel like to finally let go? Not conceptually, not as an idea in your journal or a phrase in your morning ritual, but in your body, in your bones, in your breath. It feels like a silence you forgot you were craving, a softening that doesn't need a reason. It feels like sitting alone on a quiet morning, coffee warm in your hands, and for once, not needing the next thing to happen. Not waiting for the sign, the message, the proof, just here, just now. And in that now, a strange fullness arrives, not because anything changed, but because you did. You stopped projecting yourself into a future you didn't yet trust. You stopped micromanaging the divine. You stopped standing in front of the flow, trying to direct it, and in stepping aside, you became the channel, the conductor, the receiver. Because the universe doesn't need your control, it needs your coherence. It needs a body soft enough to feel, a heart open enough to believe, a nervous system regulated enough to hold what's coming, not just call it in. And the most magnetic thing you can ever be is safe with yourself. That's the missing link no one talks about. We chase the manifestation, but ignore the truth that our body is still bracing, that our energy is still guarded, that our receiving center, our heart, is still half closed because the identity holding it isn't rooted in safety, in worth, in remembrance. So how do you shift that? Not with another affirmation, not with another technique, but with presence, with patience, with inner permission to stop performing the healing and start living as the healed. This isn't about faking peace. It's about creating the conditions for it to arise. That means slowing down enough to notice where you're still gripping, breathing deep enough to feel what you've been avoiding, speaking gently enough to stop the inner war. It means being brave enough to live without the drama of constant self-improvement, being radical enough to trust that who you are, right now, is already worthy of the timeline you crave. And that version of you, the one you think you're trying to become, she's already here. She doesn't need to be summoned. She needs to be remembered. That remembering happens in the in-between moments, in the quiet walks, in the unstructured afternoons, in the spontaneous laughter, in the soft eyes you meet in the mirror when you're not performing, when the seeker sits down and the soul finally speaks. And the soul doesn't speak in goals. It speaks in frequencies. Not when will it happen, but how do I feel now? Not what do I need to fix, but what's already working. Not who do I need to become, but what part of me can I finally stop hiding? Because when you stop being the one trying to change, you stop identifying as the lack. You stop reinforcing the distance, you stop vibrating in pursuit. And that's when the field starts to bend. That's when time starts to collapse. That's when reality rushes in to meet you. Not because you forced it to, but because you were finally still enough to be found. There's something sacred that happens when the inner striving falls silent. It's not loud. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It doesn't announce itself as breakthrough. It comes more like a whisper, a subtle exhale, a loosening of the grip you didn't even know you had. That's when you realize it was never the lack of effort that delayed your becoming. It was the excess of effort, the inner friction of trying to force a quantum process through linear means, like planting seeds and digging them up every day to check if they've sprouted. You weren't wrong for trying. You were simply in survival. Because when the nervous system doesn't feel safe to receive, it defaults to controlling. That's not a flaw. That's protection. And protection is frequency. It says, I'm not yet anchored enough in my own wholeness to trust what I can't see. But manifestation doesn't wait for proof. It waits for coherence. And coherence isn't something you create. It's something you return to, like a melody your soul has always known, beneath the noise, like a posture of being before the performance took over. This is why change feels impossible when you're still identified with the one who needs it, because trying to shift from that place only reinforces that your power lives somewhere outside of you. But true power, it's never in what you're doing, it's in what you're being while you do it. Let's make that real. Imagine two people both wanting to manifest love. One lights candles, writes lists, repeats affirmations every morning, but deep inside, her heart is guarded. Her energy is wrapped in fear. Her body is scanning constantly for rejection, for delay, for proof that she's still alone. The other does none of the rituals, but she walks through her day as if love is already with her. She speaks with warmth. She dresses with care. She makes tea like there's someone watching her with adoration. She's not pretending. She's embodying. She's not doing more. She's being more of who she truly is. Guess who the field responds to? It's not about the effort, it's about the embodied signal. And you can't fake that, you can only feel it. That's why your real job isn't to make it happen. It's to stabilize in the state where it already has. To become so internally rooted, so vibrationally relaxed, so energetically open, that your reality has no choice but to rearrange around your coherence. And coherence arrives when the inner conflict ends, when the need to do more dissolves, when the false identity, the one trying to fix, change, manage, and earn, finally steps aside. Because when that part dissolves, all that's left is truth. All that's left is the you who's always been whole. The you who doesn't manifest from pressure but from presence. The you who isn't chasing change because she is the change, the shift, the signal, and in that stillness, the field moves. The most miraculous things often happen the moment you stop watching the clock, when you stop refreshing the inbox, when you stop scanning the room, when you stop looking to the sky for confirmation that it's close, because that vigilance, that waiting, is still tied to the part of you who doubts. The part who hasn't yet collapsed the distance between now and then, who still thinks time is the measure of readiness. But in the quantum, time is not a ruler, it's a mirror, and it reflects what you are now. When you're vibrating in waiting, you prolong waiting. When you're vibrating in wholeness, you collapse timelines. So how do you shift from waiting to wholeness? You stop feeding the part of you who thinks she's waiting. You stop energizing the identity that needs evidence to feel safe. And you begin to feed something quieter, slower, truer. The you who trusts the unseen, who walks like it's already done, who no longer questions her path every time the wind changes. That kind of presence doesn't shout, it doesn't push, it allows. And that allowing, and that nervous system signal of safety, is what opens the channel. Because manifestation is not a reward for your suffering, it's a reflection of your coherence. You don't get it because you worked hard enough. You get it when you become the one who already has. That becoming doesn't happen in your journal. It happens in your breath, in your posture, in the way you pause instead of panic, in the way you trust the delay instead of doubting the desire, in the way you no longer cling to signs for validation, because you are the sign now. You are the frequency walking. You are the vision embodied. And every time you remember that, not with your mind, but with your state, you bring the field closer. This is what happens when you stop being the one trying to change. You exit the loop of lack. You exit the script of not yet. You stop being the seeker and become the space, the fertile space, the receptive space, the space where miracles land without resistance. And that doesn't mean you stop moving. It means your movement no longer comes from fear. It no longer comes from urgency. It no longer carries the vibration of, maybe this will be the thing that finally works. Because you're not doing to get somewhere. You're expressing who you already are. And from that place, change doesn't feel like force. It feels like remembering, like returning, like everything you were chasing was quietly orbiting you all along, waiting for the moment you stopped reaching and started radiating. That's the shift, not from more effort, from more essence, not with control, but with coherence. There's a peace that finds you when you stop trying to earn the life that's already yours, a softness that settles in your chest when you stop proving, performing, posturing, when you stop calculating your worth based on progress and begin to remember it was never in question. That's when the inner weather clears, the static quiets, the resistance releases, And for the first time in what feels like forever, your body becomes a sanctuary for your own becoming. This is the moment real change begins, not because something external shifted, but because the identity who kept chasing transformation has finally been laid to rest. You're not becoming more evolved, you're becoming more honest. You're telling the truth, not the mental story of needing to heal, but the cellular truth of wholeness already here. And the truth is this: when you stop being the one trying to change, you become the space where change is effortless. Because the future isn't waiting on your effort, it's waiting on your alignment with safety, with softness, with the grounded knowing that you're already the match. So instead of asking, how do I make it happen? Ask, what part of me still believes I have to? What part of me is afraid to rest? What part is addicted to urgency, to control, to the illusion that struggle equals progress? And can I, just for today, breathe deeper than the pattern? Can I choose stillness over strategy? Can I embody the version of me who already lives the vision, not through pretending, but through presence, not through performance, but through coherence? Because this is the secret encoded in every timeline you've been reaching for. It was never about changing more. It was always about trying less, surrendering the self who strives so the soul who knows can lead. And when she leads, life doesn't resist. It reconfigures. Opportunities align, conversations shift, time bends. Not because you forced the field, but because you became the frequency. So now let this land. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not waiting. You are already on the path. Not the path of becoming more, but of becoming less of who you're not. And the less you try to change, the more space you create for the miraculous to find you. Not with noise, with stillness. Not by striving, by settling. Not with fear, with faith. And from that space, from that deep, regulated, magnetic space, you don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. You become the signal. You become the invitation. You become the field.